Sorry, we're just lining up. So I think we're going to go live right now. Here we go, live on Facebook. I just got to do this bit next.
So just hold on a minute. So this is going out live, is it?
Yeah, on Facebook Live.
Okay.
Yeah, no pressure. It's very short and very gentle.
Okay.
I'm not going to give you the third degree.
That's fine. Far away.
Okay. Yeah. All right, we're just going. All right. We are live here with Tom Holland. Welcome, Tom.
Hi there. Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. And to those thousands of people waiting, Tom was slightly delayed. He had a phone call he's been waiting for 8 months. That must have been was it Hollywood calling?
No, it wasn't, but it was something I've been waiting on for a long time, and
well,
obviously it came through exactly the moment I was meant to be coming on your podcast. So I really apologize for that.
Never mind. Great to have you here. So welcome everybody to another edition of A Writer's Desk. I hope you're all staying well and healthy. These are difficult times, aren't they, when we're all stuck at home, climbing up the walls, separated from friends and family. And I think at times like this, writers, books are even more important. They're companions. They take us away to other worlds. They entertain us and delight us. And at the Writer's Desk, you've been meeting some really fascinating authors. We have an eclectic list coming up in the next weeks, including Isabella Tree, Simon Winchester, George Monbiot, and Hunter Davis. Today, my guest is historian Tom Holland, author of Dominion, Rubicon, and many other fascinating books about ancient history. Hi, Tom. Can you just tell us where you're speaking from?
I am in Brixton, on Brixton Hill in South London.
Great. And we've just put up a picture of your wonderful study and your desk. You get, by the way, you get first prize so far for most elegant and beautifully decorated desk and the tidiest.
I'm thrilled to hear that.
Are you a tidy person?
Yes, I'm neurotically tidy. Well, I like a certain degree of clutter, but it's got to be controlled clutter. And if things are out of place, then I can't get on. And it's terrible condition.
Tell us a bit about your working routine. Are you an early morning or late night or a bit of both?
Well, I have to say that basically my routine has been unchanged since coronavirus hit. I mean, it really hasn't altered very much at all. I'm in the habit of getting up reasonably early to see children off to school, which of course I'm not doing anymore, but I'm still getting up at the same time. I generally try and sit down by about 8 o'clock and just work through the day. And if the lockdown has had any impact, it's that in a way I realized the degree to which social meetings, social engagements, actually talking to your friends or having interaction with your friends are kind of like the equivalent of barnacles on the ship of one's career. And now that I have, all these barnacles have been shed, I'm just gliding through the ocean of everything that I've got to do with great fluency and ease.
Do you miss the get-togethers, restaurants, pubs?
Yes, I do, horribly, but equally, in terms of what we're talking about here, a writer's desk, I'm getting more writing done than I have for years and years.
Now, just to focus in on this wonderful study and desk, two things caught my eye particularly. One is the bust on the left of the desk, and I love the old-fashioned telephone, by the way.
Yes.
Does it work?
That was a birthday present from my wife, reflecting our shared love of Agatha Christie's. It's very much the kind of phone you pick up to report the discovery of a body in the library.
Yeah. Does it actually work, or is it just a
It does
prop?
actually. Yes, it does actually work. Yeah, I mean,
Right.
nobody ever calls it, of course. And usually, if it is, it's some bloke on a scam. But
Right.
if Poirot or somebody needs to get in touch, it's there waiting.
It's there, right.
Yeah.
So the two things that, as I said, caught my eye were the bust and the cricket pads. Tell us a little bit about both and their meaning to you in your writing life.
The cricket pads. So actually, if I hold it up, there's a bat. And
the whole
yeah.
kit.
They are like kind of flotsam and jetsam left by my pre-coronavirus life when I was starting. I play cricket a lot. It's my great team sport. I play, I think 30 games on average every summer. And I'm not as young as I was, so I have to get in quite a lot of training, both kind of general fitness, but also specifically going to nets, practicing bowling and batting. And so I was starting to do this as coronavirus was starting to spread. And I left the pads there when I came back from my most recent net, and I just haven't put them away in the attic because I can't bear to, because putting them away in the attic would be a kind of admission that we're not going to have any cricket for several months, which of course we're not, but I don't want to admit to that.
So do you play in a sort of literary team, or? Yes,
I play in a team called the Authors, which was originally founded by J.M. Barrie, and it featured Conan Doyle and
how cool.
P.G. Wodehouse and all kinds of literary luminaries. And then it went slightly into abeyance with the First World War, as so much did. Sputtered back to life, regular intervals over the century that followed, and then it got revived in 2012 as part of a book deal with Bloomsbury, who were at the time were flush with their Harry Potter loot, and essentially paid for a book in which all of us would play for the authors, and we'd each write a separate chapter. And with the advance that we got given, we were able to start playing at cricket grounds beyond my wildest dream. So whereas previously I was very much playing on kind of orbital council grounds, suddenly now I don't get out of bed unless there's a stately home or a first-class ground or something with some historical curiosity to it. So essentially it's revolutionized it's not just revolutionized my enjoyment of cricket. I always enjoyed it, but it's basically encouraged me not to retire.
So have you played at that amazing ground? Isn't it a private ground at the Getty Mansion?
Yes, several times. And in fact, I have by my desk a photograph illustrating, if I hold it up, the last time I played, which is me, and that batsman walking off is Andrew Caddick, former England bowler, but who on one occasion scored 48 not out against the might of Australia at its best, so Glenn McGrath and Shane Warne. But I bowled him for a duck.
Oh, you good man. Yeah, he's a proper cricketer, that guy.
Oh, yes. So I bowled him, I think, second ball.
You're a bowler?
Yes.
Medium fast or?
Oh, lightning quick.
Lightning quick. So, and the other object that caught my eye was the bust. Is it Cicero?
No, it's Julius Caesar. If you look at the picture of the room, there's a picture above the computer, and that's a painting of the young Cicero. So there he is reading a little book. But the bust is Julius Caesar, Cicero's kind of ultimate nemesis. And it's there because it's Julius Caesar, and I have written about Julius Caesar. But it's also, it comes from a very close friend, a very dear friend of mine who died about 10 years ago, and who left it to me. So it's precious to me for that reason above all else, and so it provides me with a reminder of her. At the other end, which you probably can't see because the photo perhaps isn't quite good enough, but there is the bust of another Caesar, and that's Nero.
It's interesting you mentioned Caesar. Of course, we're living in an age partly spurred on by coronavirus of the strong man ruler. What does an ancient example like Caesar tell us and warn us?
Well, Caesar, I mean, Caesar is, when I was young, Caesar was always a kind of hero, an example of charisma and greatness. But yes, I think in the age of leaders who use the kind of the democracy as kind of window dressing for their own power, whether it's Putin or Erdogan or whatever. I think Caesar's example comes to seem a good deal more sinister and unsettling. So he is an example of somebody who leverages and indeed provokes crisis in a kind of ancient constitutional state and ends up taking it over.
Just go back to the desk, as it's the writer's desk. Is it a kind of custom-made desk, or just a sort of jerry-built sort of? Does it have a history?
Yes. So this room originally was much smaller, and then we kind of sliced the top off as though it was the top of an egg, and built an extension on the top. And the architects were two friends of ours, Dow Jones, Bieber Dow, Alan Jones, who are very successful pair of architects, very good friends, close friends of ours, who designed it all. And so this room is their design. So the cupboards behind me are their design, and this desk is their design as well. So it's all completely built from scratch. A
custom-made study.
Yes, custom.
How delightful! And I very much like that. It's oxtail. Is it ox blood or something? The colour on the wall.
In red.
What?
Pompeian red, I think.
Oh, well, of course, Pompeian red. What else could it be? So, and what does a desk mean to you? I mean, was there a time in your life when you wrote sort of on a rickety old table, and as this desk announced you to the world and to yourself as a properly professional writer?
Well, I had two kind of standalone rickety writer's desks before this purpose-built architect-designed one, and both of them are still in our house. And my elder daughter has the first one, and my younger daughter has the second one. And in fact, just about an hour ago, my younger daughter redesigned her room, kind of like a Rubik's Cube. There's only so much space and only so much furniture in it. But anyway, so she's now moved this old desk that I had directly in front of her window. So she's now gazing out, I guess, to try and beat the cabin fever that she's perhaps currently suffering from. So yes, so both of them are in the house. I couldn't, for all kinds of sentimental reasons, I couldn't bear to get rid of either of them.
So when did you use that old desk? And
well, I'm incredibly reluctant to see any kind of change at all. I essentially like things to be exactly as they've always been until I'm forced to change, whereupon I will immediately much prefer how things, the way that things have become.
Right.
So I had the room before it got redesigned was, I thought, lovely. It was a kind of snug, small little space. But it didn't have the room for the kind of bookshelves that I got now. And my wife assured me, she said, you'll so much prefer it. You'll have so much more space. It'll be so much better. And I kind of dug my heels and said, I can't go. I don't want the palaver. I like it as it is. I don't want the change. And then we went through this kind of, months of hell. And this beautiful butterfly emerged from the chrysalis, and now obviously I'm completely happy with it.
Right. And when you, I mean, what is a desk to you, a study to you? I mean, is it a place of refuge, a torture chamber, a place of revelation, a place where life seems ordered?
It's the probably, yes. It's certainly not a torture chamber. I mean, it's a place I love being. I'm very happy here. And when I've been away, I always miss it. So I'm always happy to come back here. I think that over the past few weeks, perhaps, I've spent slightly too much time here. Yeah. I'd be quite happy not to sit for a few days now. Oh, sorry.
Don't worry.
But I think that it's a kind of safe, it's a place where I feel snug. It has a kind of womb-like character for me, and it's a place where I enjoy writing, I enjoy working, I enjoy reading, I enjoy everything that I involved about writing books, and so this is the place where I do it more than anywhere else, and so it's a place that makes me feel happy.
Yeah, I can imagine. I'm amazed that you said you start at 8 and work all day. Over the years, I've discovered I basically have 4 good hours in me.
Well, it depends what I'm doing. If I'm sitting down writing a book, then it's slightly tougher because it requires more concentration.
Yeah.
But at the moment, I am translating Suetonius.
Wow.
For Penguin Classics, which will replace the Robert Graves translation. So big bragging rights there. Big. And you'll see that it's divided up into little sections. So you get 2, you get 3, 4, 5, and it's kind of there's a pleasure in thinking, oh, I'll just do one more paragraph,
right?
Just one more. So while I've been doing this, I've been working quite hard on it, and then when I finish a paragraph, then I'll have a little break. I'll, occasionally if it's a very, very long sentence, because sometimes it can go on for kind of 18 or 19 or 20 lines, and then I'll finish that. Then I'll have a little break as well. But by and large, I'm stretching it out over the day at the moment doing that.
Presumably you studied classics at Oxford?
No, I did English at Cambridge, but I did Latin as foreign language there, and then I taught myself Greek over the decades that followed.
That's pretty impressive. So you're fluent in both?
I wouldn't say fluent because it's astonishing how quickly it fades, particularly the Greek, I think, because the Greek I didn't learn from a young age, but even the Latin, they're quite tough languages.
Yeah, sure.
And one of the reasons why I'm enjoying doing the Estonia so much is that I'm finding it now so much easier to do. The more I do, the easier it becomes.
Right, you remember. Not many people to have conversations with in those languages either.
It's not a conversational language, and to be honest, the language that it's written in is it's a very distinctive literary form, and that's part of the challenge of translating it, is to try and be true to the Latin. So I'm trying to keep to the original sentence structure, and the sentence structure is often, they're often short sentences, but sometimes, say they're very, very long with enormous numbers of subclauses, which doesn't naturally lend itself to translation into English. So there is a kind of incredible pleasure to be had in trying to arrive at a kind of literary form of English that can parallel the literary kind of a language that you get with a text like Suetonius's Lives of the Caesars. And the number of subclauses that there are, it's a bit like, again, I'm describing my daughter rearranging her bedroom as a kind of Rubik's Cube exercise. It's a bit like that, because you occasionally move, one subclause up higher up into the English sentence and so on, then you have to move another one back down, and so it goes on. So there's an incredible mental pleasure in it, even if occasionally also a form of mental frustration.
And yeah, talking about the ancient world still, I read a very good piece you wrote in the Sunday Times a couple of weeks ago, I think, about contagions and epidemics in the ancient world.
Well, it's not a subject, isn't it?
Yeah. Can you talk a bit about that and tell us, how that affected the ancient world and what lessons perhaps it holds for us as we work our way through this one?
Well, I think the lessons that it holds are that, as I said in the Sunday Times piece, is that things for us could be an awful lot worse. Because the ancients, firstly, they didn't understand how it was that these diseases were spreading, but also they were much more vulnerable because they had absolutely, they had zero immunity to really quite lethal pathogens, and the primal example of an ancient plague, and in a sense the kind of prototype that still haunts us to this day, and the measure of that is the number of times that I've been asked to talk about it, and I'm no expert on it whatsoever, is the Great Plague of Athens as described by Thucydides, and the Thucydidean account of this terrible plague that hits Athens in the second year of the Peloponnesian War. It's Thucydides is a kind of pathologist of individual suffering, but he also takes his scalpel to the way that the disease affects the body politic. And he writes about the sufferings of Athens as well as about the individual Athenians. And that's provided a kind of prototype for pretty much the way that people throughout classical antiquity, and then really into the present day as well, have continued to write about it. But what then happens with the Romans, even more than with the Athenians, is that the Roman Empire establishes this vast kind of unity, this great imperial order that in effect is one massive petri dish. And because the Roman Empire is midway between the diseases that can come from Central Africa and diseases that can come from Central Asia, and these are the two great breeding grounds of new diseases over the course of the millennia, it makes them, by the 2nd and 3rd centuries, and then into the 5th and 6th centuries, incredibly vulnerable.
Fascinating. By the way, those watching, if any of you have a question for Tom, there's a chat button, which I believe that you can hit and ask a question. Don't know if anybody's going to do that.
Oh, somebody wants to see my other 2 desks. I don't quite know how I can do that.
Don't worry. Is there any more?
No, I think that's it.
No. Well, we're almost at the end. Are there anything you'd like to say to people watching this to inspire them, comfort them in this difficult time?
I think that there's well, what I've found is that whether it's reading about great crises in the past, whether it's reading science fiction, whether it's reading biblical riffs on apocalypse, there is the current crisis sharpens one's understanding of that. And I'm finding is making me rethink all kinds of dimensions of human experience, both in the past and in literature, in all kinds of new ways. I'd much rather not be going through it. I'd much rather, of course, that we weren't undergoing it. But there is scope, I think, to reconsider things that perhaps, certainly I'd always taken for granted, and perhaps others as well. And that, I think, is almost the only comfort to be gained from undergoing a great period of trauma. So give
me a couple of examples of what you're thinking about, rethinking. Do you mean the political the way we live?
Last Sunday, it was Easter, with my wife, we got up at 5 o'clock in the morning and we walked from Brixton up to Westminster Bridge in time for sunrise. And of course, Westminster Bridge is where Wordsworth wrote his great sonnet about gazing out at the stillness of London, smokeless air. And of course, to stand on Westminster Bridge was, and to look at a still, silent, empty London was to feel the power of that very, very vividly. Equally, Westminster Bridge is the setting for the opening of 28 Days Later, the zombie film in which the protagonist wakes up in St. Thomas's and finds that, again, London is empty. And again, the kind of, to look at Westminster Bridge completely empty leading up to Big Ben and the Houses of Parliament was to feel this kind of shiver. And so both Wordsworth and zombie films were more present, were kind of recalibrated in my imagination in a way that they would never have been, no matter how many times I might have gone and stood on Westminster Bridge at normal times. And then we carried on walking along the Thames, through the city, through the West End. And I couldn't help but thinking of all the, the science fiction novels in which great cities are left abandoned, thinking about Revelation, the apocalypse. It was Easter morning, thinking about all the kind of incredible, potent mythology that surrounds the Christian understanding of the end of the world. And looking at the great imperial buildings of London, it was impossible not to think of Gibbon looking out at the ruins of the Forum and contemplating the decline and fall of the Roman Empire. So all these kind of images and understandings and ways of seeing the world that I've always had in my imagination have been supercharged for me by an experience like that. To repeat, I would much rather that we weren't going through it, but since we are going through it, there's a kind of excitement in looking at these cityscapes in a way that perhaps no one in history has done before. No one, I don't think, has anyone looked at central London as empty as it is now? I can't think so. I can't imagine so.
Absolutely fascinating. Sadly, we're out of time at the moment. It's been an absolute pleasure. I know everybody watching will have really enjoyed this. We need writers' voices in this time, and you've just showed us why. So I hope you'll all join me next Monday when we have a very funny and exciting young novelist called Sophia Money-Coutts on the show. But for the moment, it's thank you, Tom Holland.
Thank you.
And thank you, everybody, for watching. It's been a real pleasure today, and look forward to seeing you again at A Writer's Desk. Thank you again, Tom.
Thank you.
Bye.